Hi, my name is Stephanie and I'm with Robbins Plumbing, and today I want to talk to you about the importance of maintaining your water heater. So many of us don't know that your water heater should be maintained and flushed on an annual basis. And even those of us who do know don't realize a year has passed because it just blows by. So you can definitely sign up on our website for an email reminder that it's time to set up that appointment to get your water heater drained and flushed and maintained. The importance of flushing and maintaining your water heater has two amazing benefits, and they're my favorite because they're money-saving benefits. So maintaining your water heater on an annual basis helps it to run more efficiently. So it costs less in electricity or gas to get the same amount of hot water. The other thing that it does is it adds lifespan to your water heater. A water heater is an investment, so we want to help you have it last as long as possible. And maintaining your water heater on an annual basis can literally add years to its lifespan. So if you want to set up an appointment for us to come out and maintain your water heater, part of that service that we provide is we don't just drain it, we don't just flush it, but we also check all the components of the water heater, and we also check the anode rod if that's possible, as well as all the valves and everything that are around it to make sure they're in good working condition and there's no leaks. So we really want to be proactive rather than reactive. But if you're someone who wants to try to do this on your own, I'm going to help walk you through that today. But with the disclaimer that there are going to be some steps along the way where I'm going to have some warning labels that it's probably time to stop and give us a call. And just know that if you get stuck through this process, you can absolutely give us a call and we'll come out and help you. So the first step is to see if your water heater is electric or gas. If you have an electric water heater, we want to make sure that we shut off the power source at the breaker. If you have a gas water heater, we want to make sure we shut the power source off at the gas control valve, which is located at the bottom of your water heater. But before you turn that dial, I want you to get out your cell phone and I want you to take a picture of where the dial is set at so you know exactly where to turn it back to. If you have a water heater installed by Robbins Plumbing or we've been out to your home before, you should have a sticker on your water heater with these instructions on how to shut it down. But again, shutting it off at the breaker and shutting it off at that gas control valve is very important. So the cool thing about it being gas is that when you shut that gas control valve off to pilot or to vacation mode, depending on the brand that you have, it doesn't shut off the pilot, so you don't have to worry about figuring out how to relight that. But shutting off the breaker is the number one most important step if your heater is electric. And we're going to go over why that's so important here in the next couple of steps. So the tools that you're going to need is actually a garden hose. That's really about it because you're going to hand tighten it. And you're going to need to make sure that that garden hose is connected to the drain valve that's at the bottom of your water heater. So if you have a water heater installed by Robbins Plumbing, you have a brass drain valve and you don't have to worry too much. You're just going to hand tighten that hose. But if you have a different brand or maybe one bought at a hardware store, it's going to have a plastic drain valve and you want to be very, very, very careful and fragile because if that breaks, it's a nightmare and we're coming out. So you want to just hand tighten the garden hose to that drain valve at the bottom of the water heater. And then you're going to make sure that that drain hose is being exited to a safe place. So I want you to remember scalding hot water is coming out of this. So you want to make sure it's draining to a place where no kids, no dogs, no one's going to walk into that and, hey, what is this? It's fascinating. And you want to make sure there are no kinks in the hose because sediment is going to come out of this garden hose and it's like little rocks. And too much of that going through and it going through kinks, it's going to stop the production of the water flowing through, and we want to make sure that doesn't happen. So the garden hose needs to be as straight as possible, have no kinks in it, and it's draining to a safe place, and you've only hand tightened it to that drain valve at the bottom of the water heater. Okay, the first thing that we're going to do is flush your water heater. So it's very much like a blender. You don't want to just pour stuff out. You really need to pulse it. And that's what we're going to do with the flushing part. So at the top of your water heater, well, it's usually located at the top, is the shutoff valve for your water heater. And this is where one of my warning labels is going to go up. If you have a valve at the top of your water heater that has a circular handle, it's called a gate valve, and they are notorious for breaking. Be prepared for that. It's not anything that you've done wrong, but at that point, it's definitely time where we have to call out one of our techs to go and replace that. So righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, you need to make sure that this valve works. So you know that it's working if it stops turning. So when you go to turn it in the off position to the right, if it stops turning, we're in good shape. But you want to make sure you turn it to the left and it opens back up, because that's where a lot of these valves tend to break, is when we turn them back in the on position. So if it stops turning at that point, we're in good shape, and we're going to on, off for this flushing. But I'm definitely going to recommend, if you have a gate valve, that you schedule us to come out and replace it, because we want to put in what is called a ball valve. So if you have a valve that has a lever handle on it, that's called a ball valve, and they are really, really reliable. So again, it's righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So to turn that valve into the off position, you're going to turn it right. It's only going to turn 90 degrees, and it's going to be 90 degrees from the pipe. And we're going to want to turn it on and off, which gives us that flushing motion, water on, water off. Because the water doesn't come in at the top of your water heater. It actually has a dip tube that goes all the way down to the bottom, or close to the bottom, that's going to give us that on, off, and stir all that stuff up that's at the bottom of your water heater. And make the icky face, because you're going to see when it comes out, it's kind of icky. But we want to flush that. So we're going to on, off, a good 10 times, 7 to 10 times, just depending on how long it's been since you've maintained your water heater. And you're going to see all kinds of stuff start coming out of the hose. Rocks, it's white, it's kind of but we want to do that flushing action. But then we want to get all of that out. We want to drain the water heater. So here's where another warning label goes up. So on your water heater, we need to vent it. So just like a straw, it will never drain the liquid from it if we hold our finger over the top. So it's the very same thing for your water heater. In order for us to drain it, we need to vent it. So, and that's done by manufacturer's recommendations by turning on the T&P. So there's a temperature and pressure relief valve on your water heater. It's a brass valve, either located on the side or on the top. We'll have a picture of it and show you that. But there's a little metal tab on there. And the warning label is because these, if you've never maintained your water heater and worked this tab, a lot of times it'll start leaking and it won't shut off. The good news is that you've caught it before an emergency happens, because this temperature and pressure relief valve is designed to relieve pressure if the tank pressure gets too high. So there's actually a couple of videos on Mythbusters where that T&P valve is made to be faulty and a water heater literally turns into a rocket and it blows up out of the garage. This can absolutely happen. So it's very important through that process on an annual basis that you make sure that this temperature and pressure relief valve is in good working condition in case, heaven forbid, something ever happens with your water heater and the pressure becomes too much. That temperature and pressure relief valve is supposed to safely exit the 210 plus degree hot water. So if that starts to leak, it's not anything to be concerned about. It's just time to call out Robbins Plumbing for us to come and replace it. But this is where we're going to vent your water heater and allow air to come in through the top so we can allow water to come through the bottom. And this is just a time thing at this point. This is where I encourage people to grab a chair and a glass of wine or a beer, whatever your preference, because it's going to take a little bit to either drain 40 gallons, 50 gallons. Your water heater may be a little bit larger than that. We want to allow it enough time to vent and drain all of that water out and all that sediment. And depending on how long it's been since your water heater was maintained, this may take a couple of times of filling it up and allowing it to drain again. At this point, once all that sediment is drained out and you see water running clear, it's time to get everything connected back again. I'm gonna have a couple warning labels on this one too. So if your heater is electric, do not turn that breaker back on. Don't do it, not till I tell you to, because this is where most people really get in trouble. Your elements that are inside your water heater, if they have power to them and they're exposed to air instead of water, they will literally explode. It looks cool. When we replace them, we're like, whoa, that's quite the explosion. But we don't want that to happen to you. So I really want you to follow these steps like A to Z perfectly. So we're going to turn off the drain valve at the bottom of your water heater and of course disconnect the garden hose. And then we're going to fill the water heater back up completely with water. So you're going to turn that valve back on at the water heater at the top, whether it was a gate valve or a ball valve, and we're going to drain that. We're going to make sure that T and P valve is closed and it's not leaking. But then we have to make sure all the air is removed from the water heater, and that's done by turning on some faucets onto hot. And they're going to spurt out air. It's going to be loud. Nothing to be concerned about, but we need to bleed all of the air out of that water heater before we turn the power source back on. So once those faucets are running clear with that cold water is when it's the indication that it's safe to go ahead and turn that power source back on. So we're going to go ahead at that point, turn off the faucets. We're going to turn back on the breaker, leave the water onto the water heater. Of course, we need to leave water running into there. Or if you had a gas valve at that point, you're going to go back to that picture as a resource and turn it back to where it was. And just make sure everything, so what we do is we take a piece of paper towel, we're going to run it over the flex lines on the top of the water heater, around that T and P valve. We're going to run it over that valve, the ball valve at the top, but we're going to make sure there's no moisture anywhere because we want to make sure we catch it now before it becomes a big leak. But if you're at this point and everything is successful, you have flushed and drained your water heater. And this is something you absolutely should do once a year to extend the life of your water heater. I hope you guys found this tip super helpful today. If it was a little overwhelming, of course, you can give us a call and we're happy to come out and drain and flush and maintain your water heater for you. You can reach us at 623-486-4657 or of course on our website at robinsplumbing.com.